Go ahead.
maybe first of all, let's talk about their model, right?
Yeah.
They're basically following the same kind of model as Cosmos is proposing. So that's not the same, but that's similar. They have basically an SDK that they call Substrate, and any blockchain that is built with this SDK can easily integrate to the Polkadot network. And so basically, the Polkadot layer one is acting as a central interconnection layer between the parachains. And so they use the layer zero term, but basically, yeah, it's very similar to Cosmos, where this central blockchain is responsible for the interaction with the side chains, or they call it parachain in that case.
Yeah. So high level, they're similar in that respect. There are definitely details that are different, but some of the bigger details, in my view, are about the intentional limitations about how many parachains you can have, and they're weird, to me, very weird slot renting kind of methodology. When I looked into it, I honestly, without grants, I'm not, like, for me, I don't know why I would ever develop there.
Sure.
Unless you're getting paid for it. It always seemed overly complicated, and it had these sorts of limitations, and now they're fixing some of them. So yay to improvements.
Well, I think they're selling the same. It's a similar message, right, as Cosmos. It's also a similar message that we've been speaking about. There's a lot of similar words that we would use dealing with things where we're interoperable, those kinds of conversations.
Right.
So when you start looking at all of them, you really have to start separating them by their technical standing. Now, Cosmos is different than Polkadot. We spent a lot of time already talking about Cosmos, but with many of these ecosystems, it's sure we can interoperate, but you've got to come into my play yard. You've got to come into my world and do my things. And then, by the way, something here also has to validate those things. And you got to go out through my doors when you want to go out through my doors. And so, to me, that makes me a little bit uncomfortable to get all of that flexibility, to get all that interoperability means you got to come into my yard and you got to do it in my yard.
That's the thing we're trying to fight with Divi sidechains, because that's not a Cosmos or Polkadot thing. That's all blockchains. They're all silos, right?
Yeah.
It's the same CrowdStrike issue, right? Like, again, they're having everything going through what they call layer zero. So basically this intermediary layer between the different parachain or subchain of their network. And very clearly this leads to some major limitations, right? So one of the limitations they have is the ability to be able to verify that, is that basically you were mentioning that they can't deploy more parachain, right? Right now there is, and it's not a hard lock. However, the number of validators they have, which is currently at max based on their projection, which is 1,000, only allow them to validate transaction for 100 parachains without seeing some decline in the performance of the blockchain, like Solana that we just talked about. Right? And so basically, facing those issues, they just announced, or they just implemented this Polkadot 2.0, and they're basically releasing very interesting tech, a few different components, and they're all basically directed at making sure they improve efficiency of how the current resource of the network are used. Because again, as they can't grow the network bigger than what they have now, they have to invent some prioritization in the way transactions are validated. Parallel, I think they're actually going back in a smart contract for some of their solution relies on that, which was actually something that they kind of rejected in the beginning, but they see that they're basically hitting a wall.
That's the biggest news of the whole thing to me. Is that so they have this thing in the center they call the relay chain. That's the thing that communicates, allows one parachain to communicate to another parachain, and now they've created another network inside, and their messaging on it is like, you don't need a parachain to provide utility, since there's only a limited number of slots for these parachains. Here is another way to get utility with our system, and that's smart contracts in the middle chain. That's like sticking Ethereum in the center of that. And to me, it's absolutely going backwards. Our stuff didn't work, so we're going to put smart contracts in here. To me, I don't even care what the rest of the advancements were. Now you've made no reason to have to use the parachains at all, because the smart contracts are in there. And as we've noted many, many, many times, smart contracts are a centralizing aspect. And I think it's the wrong way to approach growth. They're trying to approach growth to say, okay, you can do this other stuff now, but that other stuff is the problem in all the other blockchains. And so I think they just went the wrong way.
But for us, it's kind of a gift, because we see that they are definitely stuck in their model. I think this 2.0 update that is 100% centered in kind of reshuffling the resource so that they can actually kind of appear to scale, right? For us, it's very interesting because it really completely validates our model. We don't have any of those issues with our model. There is no centralized layer that is supposed to validate things for the other chains. Other chains are completely independent. They can be connected to each other, and they don't rely on a third-party chain to be able to operate. And that is such a major CrowdStrike-like limitation that for us, it seems pretty insane.